So welcome everyone again to the IDRiM podcast. This is still part of the series that we discover and uncover the disaster in Sumatra that occurring from the November until today. So we already discussed earlier in the other episodes about how the effect of deforestations actually increased the floods into eightfold times. Now we are here with two professors from the Bandung Institute of Technology, Indonesia, that will explain how such disaster can happen due to the occurrence of the cyclones in Indonesia, which is very rare. That all I think in my memory it's almost never happening before. But these two professors can explain more in detail about that as we delve into all how the cyclone develops and how the climate change connection perhaps play a part in it. So welcome to the podcast, Dr. Saut and Dr. Rais. How are you doing today?
Good, Haris.
Okay. For the first questions, perhaps that's in the news and perhaps in many early warnings and predictions, we know that the disaster happenings because of the occurrence of the cyclone Senyar. So, as both of you from the university, can you explain to us from a scientific perspective when did this hazard truly begin? It is with the heavy rains that bring by the cyclones, or there are any more factors that should be taken into account here?
I think related to cyclone, maybe I'll be speaking later. Yeah, I think Pak Rais will speak more because he knows better about cyclone. But I'll speak about risks or disasters later on. Maybe, yeah, please, Pak Rais.
I will try. Okay. So since I'm meteorologist, so I study weather and climate, and in terms of meteorology pattern, the tropical cyclone Senyar, TC Senyar, maybe we can say it started from 21st November. Yeah, initiated on 21st November when it appeared as tropical disturbance. So it's like the earliest stage of TC, and then it developed into real TC, which have sustained when the wind speed is already very strong and the pressure level is very low, and then it reached peak on 25th November and disappear on 30 November. Yeah, but when you ask about truly appear or truly begin, it's very difficult to answer. Well, I mean, in terms of meteorological phenomena, which on the typical scale of 1 week, yeah, let's say 1 week. In Europe, I think it's a typical time scale of 1 week. Yeah, we can say it's last about 1 or 2 weeks, yeah, something. But of course, environmental factors such as climate change might have impact on the background climate, and that can the intensity or the track you see. But anyway, I'm what I can answer with surely about from 21st November until the end of November. Yeah, I think like that.
So
yeah, maybe I try to join a little bit. I think later on when we talk about disasters, I think other factors may affect, and that includes physical, non-physical related. Physical may include, for example, even the topography of the we call it Bukit Barisan. Yeah, do we have an English term for Bukit Barisan? I don't remember, but it's like the slopes, yeah, along Sumatra, for the hilly areas along Sumatra. And and there are some, of course, land use activity, including, for example, agricultures, plantations, even minings, and including, of course, housing settlements. So those factors related to what was mentioned by Rais earlier about the climate change context intertwine and bring the larger impact. but this is among, I would say, rare events. So on that context, this is something that bring the complexity and I would say uncertainty that makes reactions by government, either national, local, and community would be quite, I would say, not easy. And I'll go on details about that, but just to follow what Pak Rais just mentioned. Over. Sorry, Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for your answer. So, what made the cyclone Senyar very unusual, or particularly dangerous? Because we get cyclones, frequently around the world. So, what made this one unusual and very dangerous for the people of Sumatra?
Okay, yeah, we are used to with very rare, very infrequent. Yeah, I mean, TC mostly appear, but Indonesia is exactly in the equatorial region, which statistically TC is very rare. Yeah, if you compare with the neighboring nation of Philippines, yeah, they are very how to say, it's like a usual phenomena by for them. So they are used to with the TC, so they have houses that can resist the wind. They have signed the river with their extreme rainfall, large amount of rainfall. But in Indonesia, this kind of event is very rare. So our system, our infrastructure, our designs were not, say, this event was rated in the previous design or in our capacity. So that's why the damage is very and the intensity of cyclone comparison with Philippines is relatively low. So let's say the wind speed is not as large as TC in Philippines, and the rainfall is not lasted longer than the Philippines, but the damage still very devastating because it's very rare for us. Yeah, I think like that.
And since you mentioned that it's very rare and like that doesn't have the infrastructures, perhaps us also pointing out what Pak Saut mentions, that there's also intertwined factors between how the geographical characteristic of the slopes and the land use development that has been there for several years, how it's basically make it worse, these conditions, because just the existence of cyclones, how big that part play a part in this disaster, and how big is actually the other factors playing a part in this disaster. Is this 50-50, or if there's no cyclones there will be no disaster, or if it's become like just make it worsening conditions because of the it hits the part that it's basically very prone to this kind of hazards?
I may have a different opinion with Rais, but I think that's why we need to have this kind of discussions, right? Before Senyar, let me just recall a little bit. Last year, in one of the location, it's called in West Sumatra, in Sumatra Barat, in Agam, there was also what was called Galodo. So there was also the flash floods, the debris flows, and it caused casualties. It was also large, right? It was also large. So it again happened this year. Of course, there is influence of this cyclone, but what I'm trying to say that the area was not large as what was this year. So this year is about 50 or 53 regencies, cities or regencies like Kabupaten Kota. But last year it was only limited in certain locations in West Sumatra. So in terms of risk, it was already there. In terms of risk, it was already there, and it happened, right? One thing, so I'm trying to say that because there is already vulnerability there. what is the vulnerability? Because people living, of course, along the river bank. That's one thing. Second, I would like to highlight the role of land use changes, because, of course, with the high rainfall intensity, the ability of the, let's say, to bring water in to infiltrate to the soil, it's getting more limited. So in that sense, with the size of Senyar, the impact of the rainfall intensity by Senyar, it amplify the situations, but the vulnerability was already there. So meaning even without cyclone, with almost the same amount of water, it also brought something similar. But this time it's just wider, from Aceh spread out to North Sumatra up to West Sumatra, different provinces. But the capacity to deal with, so if we are able to learn and mobilize our resources, and for example, local government could do something, even community could also evacuate before, I believe the impacts would be lower. But that capacity was unfortunately low. So meaning with the high vulnerability, capacity is low. You know the math. Risk equals, or the equation is risk, hazard times vulnerability divided by capacity. With the low capacity, you have higher risk. With the high vulnerability, you have high risk, and hazard becoming higher this time, big and wide. So I'm trying to say that this is really like a perfect condition of like a perfect storm, So the risk become really, really huge because of such situation. And I would like to highlight, even without the hazard high, the vulnerability is already there, and also the capacity is quite low, meaning that they trigger to the risk. If you ask about numbers, I would say vulnerability and capacity play also very important role in these situations. But I think on the hazard, maybe Pak Rais will say something.
Yes, I agree with Pak Saut, because the question is related to the intensity of this year, which is very rare. But in terms of hydrometeorological disaster, well, it is very, very frequent, because the hazards are, but now they are exposed, then they are very vulnerable. Then disaster, if we Google it, flood event in Indonesia, it occurs every year, Pak Saut. And every region has, because we have deep convection in the scale, in the tropics, many rainfall, so it's not rare. 112 meter is not rare, but still was very huge in the Senyar event. So it's very typical, but in terms of this year, it's very, very rare, But in terms of disaster, it's very, very frequent.
Yeah, so in terms of the rainfall totals, how much above normal would we say that the rainfall in Sanya was? But
very interesting question, So to give you a perspective, so monthly rainfall in Aceh, typically monthly climatology, so on average, it's about 350 millimeter or 400 lah, let's say. So that's per month. So sometimes some year can only 200 during El Nino. Sometimes you get 500. But during last event, only we get 300. So more than 75% climatology rainfall already occur on that day. So when it can be amplified when we accumulate 1 week, So that's why the damage can be very devastating, I think. But not all region have 300 millimeter, but I saw several locations,
So it's the intensifications of the rains, and because like both of you basically describe how it's become the good place for disaster to happen, then the intensification of hazards, as well as the vulnerable conditions is already there. And I'm just looking for projecting in the future now, because like it's already occurring Indonesia, I think many times, not only because of this, but before is we have floods in many areas as well. Due to if like climate change in the futures, in the near future, within 5 years or even 10 years only, will become frequent disaster that we will face in Indonesia? Look at how vulnerable it is in Indonesian regions, as well as the increasing intensifications or maybe frequency of the rains, not only because of cyclones, but the rains season in general.
Maybe I'll try to come in first, yeah, and then I leave the cyclone part to Pak Rais. Yeah, I think in general, we have about, I think BNPB provide the numbers like 90% of disasters in Indonesia are hydrometeorological related events, right? Floods would be something very, very common. But second to that would be landslides. And we have also drought, for example, in some part of Indonesia. But if we try to see how we try to reduce the risk of flooding, which is through, for example, it can be structural and non-structural measures. The structural measures would include, of course, making sure that there is, like something like dikes, to protect people. But it will be massive, it will be massive because the way we build our cities and also I would say the regions, it's already like giving a lot of exposures to different type of disasters. For example, because of they are just next to slopes, they are next to the floodplains, for example, and then the poor drainage system, urban drainage system also contributes to that. So don't expect cyclone or rainfall intensity above 200, for example. Even rainfall in a very short period of time in some cities through urban, with the poor urban drainage system, there can be inundations. Maybe people don't call it flooding, but it's already inundation. And when we call inundation, it will cause like staying there 2-3 hours. So there is already impacts. So on that sense, we have not been able to manage these inundations yet. So when you have more rain, more water, then of course floods will happen, right? So to answer to your point, I just wanted to give illustrations. For example, in the next 5 years, I think it will be difficult. But if I would like to suggest, then I would say increase the awareness of the community, meaning that to know about flood risk map, for example, and then know where to evacuate. Second is for local government, how to mobilize people, and then also to use this one thing. Maybe people sometimes ask about this. So we have the agency that issue the warning or the issue of the rainfall intensity pattern predictions. That is the BMKG. In this role, we have BMKG already. Maybe Pak Rais will explain the details. Issue the warning about there will be cyclone, for example. There will be heavy rain. But our capacity to translate such information into actions to protect the people, to save, for example, maybe also their cars or their belongings, I would say still limited. So improve this capacity. I think at least it significantly reduced the impact at this point of time. But long term, of course, we need to think about, if possible, also to do to reduce the deforestation, or even to replant some trees more, because then we will be able to infiltrate water more and have less water, run off going to the city or that affect the people. I think that's the thing that I can suggest at this point of time. But we have the capacity to predict. I think very accurate, quite accurate. If the time is just within less than 2 weeks, maybe 1 week or 5 days, but the actions is something, the homework that we need to deal with. Over from here.
Yeah, actually, this event is like about about managing the risk is very like so. Of course, the ideal I think the ideal one is like we can estimate the maximum of rainfall. Let's say for maximum of rainfall, and then we can make flood risk map like Pak Saud say, and we can say if the flood is too big, the simulated flood is too big, and we still manage the water, the Indonesian, right? But correct me if I'm wrong, Pak Saud. I think the design of river, the design of let's say some other river infrastructure is they use a return period of 50 years of rainfall, right? Nah, when we check the rainfall data and we calculate the return period, it was quite, how to say, the statistically it was projected to be hundred of years of return period of rainfall. So I mean that when I talked with a civil engineer, they said to manage this kind of water when they need more money, very huge amount of money. So that's why they use only 50 years return periods. But for earthquake, I heard they use like thousand of years return period. So I mean that this kind of the dilemma. I think we need to make ideal mitigation strategies or adaptation, but we have limited money, and the ideal way is to avoid this region. But I think this is in terms of spatial planning. Pak Saud, I can go into more deep detail, but in terms of hazard, what I can say is hazard of extreme rainfall maybe not become extreme in future. It's like more frequent. Extreme statistically mean rare, right? But 200 millimeter maybe it's not very extreme in future. So that's very, how to say, alarming. Like I can say like that.
Getting more regular, more common, more
common.
That
more common. So not we cannot say extreme in statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you talk about extreme rainfall and Professor Saut, I noticed you said about rainfall in a short period of time and how cities, try to, protect themselves against that. That's not a phenomenon, but obviously is limited to just Indonesia. It's every city in the world is now having to try and deal with this new normal, as some people would call it. So I know that in the city that I'm based in, we've had this situation as well where we get these intense rainfalls from storms as well, and we just flood and have to sit there for a few hours to wait for them to pass over. So even in countries that say that they're developed, against these situations, they're not. But I actually wanted to come back to the cyclone and my last question about the cyclone, and it also links with the climate change element to it. So as scientists, and how much of a surprise was it that a cyclone formed in the Strait of Malacca? Because it's not a region you would naturally associate with cyclones. So when the BMKG came out and said there's going to be a cyclone here, how much of a surprise was it to you that this was going to occur?
So how much surprise you ask So memang statistically it's very rare in Indonesia and also in Strait of Malacca, but we meteorologists understand actually possible. It can happen. When we look at the climatology map of cyclone distribution over the globe, over the world, actually many there are few cyclones occur very close to equatorial line, and actually we how to say we understand that it can happen, but of course we surprised when it happened and the damage it can affect, and we try to understand that, and we try to check the meteorological parameters, and meteorologically during that time. Oh, maybe you heard about Coriolis force, right? Coriolis effect, right? And we understand that Coriolis effect at equator is very close to equator. It is not zero, but still Coriolis effect can induce vorticity when there is a strong convergence and when there is a strong steering flow, that's consistent flows from the high vorticity region from extratropics. And that's what happened during that time. There is a persistent northeasterly wind from the north, from South China Sea, then that converts with a westerly wind to the west, and then it then promotes convection, most convection, and the vorticity increase. Maybe not as fast as cyclone in Philippines, but still it can happen. And then I can say that's very extreme weather events at that anomaly working together, and then develop cyclone. I think like that. Of course, I can go into details. I can show you meteorological map, but I'm afraid it's very confusing.
Now,
So,
building on
mm,
that,
mm,
it's basically you mentioned that the meteorologists in Indonesia already know, and
mm,
the previous answers is basically like the
mm,
BMKG, that the meteorological office has the capabilities to actually to predict, and
yes.
your suggestions to actually build up the awareness and mitigations for preparing the future disasters. Now,
Mm,
the devastation is very big in
mm,
in the area that affected by this disaster in Aceh, in West Sumatra, and North Sumatra.
mm.
Do you think the government will prioritize rebuilding the area first or preparing for the next disaster first? And from the scientific point of view, which one is more, let's say, beneficial regarding prioritizations? Because, like, of course, we don't want to repeat this disaster again in another part of Indonesia, but in the same times, the people suffered there is still needs to recover and help.
Maybe
I
Saut
yeah, I
better to
guess
answer first.
the answer to to government maybe it's more into the planning side, right? Well, I can say not much options. First of all, I think let's use Philippines as the one of the illustrations. Philippines is a country where it get hit by cyclone. I can't remember now the details, but I think more than 10 times, 12 times, or recent report says it's getting more about 20 cyclones. But you cannot move the people out of the Philippines because they're consisting of islands and limited space that are quite let's say safe from cyclones like this. So I think the same answer would apply for Indonesian context. In Sumatra context, it will be difficult, of course, to mobilize more people, a lot of people. So but one thing that I always use as an answer is let's analyze the risk factors. So what are the risk factors? What contributes? What constitutes, the risk in these particular locations because of the context. So say we are talking about cyclones and then hydrometeorological hazards that are related, but there is vulnerability that I mentioned earlier, right? So try to reduce the exposure of people living along the floodplain area would significantly reduce the number of the amount of risks, right? So it can be done through land use planning, but we need to be strict. There is no compromise on that. We need to make sure that it's back there applied. Second is that, of course, again, this is quite a common answer. Everybody knows, but we don't always do that. Is to replant the forest there, because then you will have less water going to the city, less water being discharged to the city because you will have more infiltrations. However, of course, it's not the only solution, because I also had a discussion with colleagues from geological background. They said, of course, the layer, the soil layer there is quite shallow. So at some point there's limitation because there are some rocky in the bed, it's difficult for water to get in, but it still has, of course, contribution. Other than that, increase the mitigation. Government has to understand, local government has to understand, even community has to understand that Indonesia is in the location where we are exposed to disasters, right? In our common folklore or discussion, we are blessed with fertile soils and blah blah blah, very nice living, but we forget to mention that we are prone to disasters. So if you don't deal with these disasters by reducing the factor of risk, there is time where the risk become disaster. So I will suggest this. I will try to mention that please do the mitigation. And the other thing that I would like to highlight is that what I can observe through the television is that people were clueless where to evacuate. So making sure that we have evacuation shelter in the Philippines, and I went there to the Philippines, several times. Even I got trapped in. There was one cyclone season in the Philippines when I got trapped in Manila. It was around December, before COVID. I was there. But people were not panic. People just bought the groceries. They stay at home. Some of them went to the evacuation shelter organized by the barangay captain. Barangay captain is just like the neighborhood chief. They went there. There was flooding, but less people get killed and so on. So cyclone will come, flood will happen. But if you are able to evacuate people before the water enter the houses, especially that are located in the lower or floodplain area, so you will have less people drown, right? But this needs to be organized from the central government and then the standard operating procedure, what should be done and so on. So if there's cyclone in the next maybe 5 days from now, and BMKG, the local, the National Agency on Meteorology and Geophysics issue warning, they know where to go. Housing can be damaged, but people can rebuild because you save life. The US also experienced this. They call it hurricane. They experienced this around Louisiana, around the southern part of the US, but you reduce number of people killed. So that's what I can do. But to stop the cyclone, I have no idea. Maybe Pak Rais.
We cannot stop the cyclone. We need to live with this nature. So yeah, there is the energy of cyclone is too strong. Yeah, we cannot modify the weather because the energy is too strong. Anyway, yeah, we can predict it. Yeah, at least few days before the cyclone appear. So of BMKG official already told me, Pak, I already issue warning, already conduct the forecast, already issue warning to the local BMKG. But the problem is, like Pak Saut say, yeah, maybe the protocol, the procedure to issue the warning is still not ideal, not effective, and yeah, the information maybe not received well by community, by people living there. So yeah, this is, I think, the very important part. And yeah, even though the information is received to the people, if they think it is not important, if they think it is not hazardous, they, of course, they don't care. Like now, I think the literacy of or the education of people related to this kind of events still, how to say, I think because of this event, I'm sure Indonesia will be more aware about the cyclone. So maybe 2 weeks ago when we see notification from BMKG, oh, there is a cyclone over there. Oh, maybe they don't care. They didn't care. Yeah. But now I'm sure they will be more careful. That, of course, if it needs to be supported by government. It needs to be input in the curriculum of education from young, from students. Yeah, in Japan, yeah, also in Philippines, maybe, yeah, from elementary school, they need to understand the risk. They are told that this country is not safe, but we can adapt, we can live with this hazardous nature. So, but in Indonesia, sometimes we tell lies to people. Oh, our country is very safe, very rich. But we need to make them understand that this country is very prone to risk, and they need. I think Pak Saut already very well for that.
Okay, so last question for me, and this one's quite develops on a point about land use planning, and in particular, you mentioned about replanting forests. So this is a question that I think I would imagine Indonesia is trying to grapple with a little bit about the forestry. So we know that in particular around Borneo and around Sumatra, a lot of the land has been changed, deforestation for palm oil plantation. And we've learned from a previous episode that palm oil plantation just doesn't have the ability to absorb the rainfall as well as the natural forest does. So here comes the question: what's more important, economic prosperity and development versus the maintenance of the forest?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. But I would slightly revise the question to, at least for me. What is more important, the economy or the lives of the people? So
Yeah.
I don't bring economy and the forest, of course, but to save the life of the people, you need to save the forest, right? So that's what I would like to bring that into perspective, because otherwise it seems we're thinking about, okay, you don't have money but you have forest. No, you don't have much money, for example, or you have less money, but you have people who has a beautiful forest, who has good protections from the environment perspective, or maybe even the forest can bring in something other benefit through carbon, through even some tourism, but we need to make it quite, I would say, green tourism, yeah, something friendly, because although green tourism can be quite tricky, because then you have really more people and then you don't protect the forest. I would like to highlight that to protect the environment will save the people, and this is the number one priority. If we have to have the economy, or let's say open the land use, but it will bring destruction or disasters, I think even the permit should not be issued on that. I think that's the very basic one in my perspective. And it's also in the discipline of planning, we have what is called externality. If you open an activity and you build some buildings, for examples, but it caused some impact to others, you need to internalize the impact so that it can be issued as a permit. Otherwise, at the first place, it should not be permitted. I think that's by the planning, spatial planning discipline. It's already, there is a instrument on that. But we don't always follow this, unfortunately.
All right. So also one last question from me, and in order also to close this podcast, basically for both of you, if you have a time that you can say directly to the Indonesians top decision makers, whoever that may be, what demands you will say to them? What kind of policy or change or development that you want to ask for the decision makers in Indonesia regarding this disaster and to prepare the future disasters?
Yeah, for meteorological perspective, this is very rare. Yeah, for me, I think we need to study more. In Indonesia, actually, only 4 universities that study meteorology deeply. Yeah, only 4. But we have a lot of hydrometeorological disaster, right? But yeah, in terms of disaster, we know our country is very prone to disaster. So usually, when disaster happen, most money comes to, how to say, response, emergency response, something like that. But can we make a more long-term planning? I think it's very difficult to do in Indonesia. So when we do long-term planning, of course, it is heavy investment, but maybe we can save more disaster. We can minimize more impacts later, minimize. So we not only ready after the disaster, but we are always ready every time. So hopefully like that.
Yeah. How many do you want, Haris? Is there any limitation? I've got some bullets to throw, to mention here. But you want only one or two or okay.
Just throw it, so no worries.
Yeah. First thing first, I will say first thing first, strengthen the capacity to respond when there is any warning provided by authority like BMKG. Making sure that central government clear what to do, making sure that local government we have local disaster management agency know what to do, making sure that community also know what to do, because there is also a role where if you don't know where to evacuate, then you will get drowned. That is clear. So these three things. The first thing is on making sure the actions, from the otherwise warning will be just warning. You don't use the warning as a way to take actions. Second, now we are talking more about long term. I think Rais covered this also before, and I also mentioned this. We need to make sure that please correct the land use planning. Please revise the land use planning. Please review and revise, and making sure that the floodplain area is designated where people have to be, don't live there permanently. You don't use it for housing, for any build-up activities. The third one, of course, we need to know that in dealing with disaster risk, we have to allocate budget. So on that sense, please prioritize this, because of course government has many priorities, but in Indonesia context, especially, we need to strengthen our capacity. That will require budget. I think Pak Rais mentioned about the civil engineering case about the the return period of a river or drainage. We need to understand, because, for example, when I was in the Netherlands doing my study there, I went to some structures there, river structure. They said this is for 1,000 year. So you will only tolerate with only small mistakes, small events, one of these 1,000 years. But in 50 years, even it can be more than than 50 years. Within the short 50 years can happen. Because like typhoon like this may happen more. So investment in disaster risk reduction would be needed for this, because we are living in the disaster prone area. I have more, but I think I will close with this, because I think this will be my quite I would say urgent thing to say here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the strong message as to close this podcast. We know that we always hopes that the situations get better in Sumatras, and hopefully the future disaster can be reduced by getting the input from the scientific communities and the developments that being prepared for the communities by the governments. So, dear our listeners, we reported these conditions from Sumatra from the perspective of how it does develop and affecting the people there. Hopefully, you enjoy these episodes, and thank you very much to come here, Dr. Saut and Dr. Rais, and see you next time.